look at anything, it will boil down to either pain or fear. Now, astrologically, pain and fear are indicated by Saturn and Rahu. So, coming back to your question about mental attitudes. So, Saturn and Rahu basically will indicate how much pain and how much fear you will carry in this life and what you need to overcome to move ahead. Now, you also spoke about mental attitudes. So, in a birth chart, the moon indicates your mind. The moon indicates how you think, how you feel, your emotional quotient, and also your well-being, overall well-being. Because if our mind is healthy, we are overall, doing well. So when we look at the planet moon in the chart and there is close association, of course there can be a whole lot of complex combinations. So I will not narrow it down to one or two because that will not be fair. But when Saturn and Rahu associate closely with the moon, a lot of times, 95% of the times, it will bring either fear or sorrow. And that is something you need to overcome in this lifetime. That's your biggest lesson. That is your challenge.
Is this something that a normal person can see in their chart and figure?
Normal person, I'm not sure, but astrologers should be able to guide you with that.
Okay. And there are ways of, a planet wahan hai, this is your learning, you know this. A good astrologer can help people, guide them how to navigate through this and come out on the other side, not just by doing things like mantra jap or other things, but
absolutely, I've done that work. I've worked with people who've gotten into heavy drugs and alcohol, been into depression. I've had, like I said, a whole bandwidth of the kind of people I've worked with. So as I said, the first thing is to acknowledge that this is my issue. That's your beginning for anything. And then of course there are remedies that I will give. And to change the energy in the physical environment. And then I will tell them what patterns they need to recognize and move beyond. Because planets, as I mentioned, are indicating the patterns that you're stuck in. And then I have to give them the solution of what is the best way to move past it.
So, Kanuji, there's one more thing. There's a lot of fear, right? Like people are fearful to go to an astrologer because they don't want to know what's next. They don't want to know what you're going to tell them. And you know, when I say fear, I think there's this one word called Sade Sati, which I think everyone's very clueless about. People don't know what it is, but there's just so much fear induced to it. Like every time you say astrology, the only thing people who don't know astrology bolenge Sade Sati. And wo aa gaya matlab everything bad in your life, even if there's a small fall, if you've dropped your coffee, Sade Sati. Can you explain why this misconception about Sade Sati is all out there?
So, I remember we spoke about the moon when I mentioned that the moon indicates your mind and your overall well-being. It also indicates your mother because without your mother you can't have overall well-being as an infant. So when we speak about Sade Sati, I'll quickly tell you what it actually technically means and then I'll explain the impact of it. When the Saturn in transit comes 12th in the rotation from your natal moon. So natal moon is basically your moon sign. Wherever moon is placed at the time of your birth, it's also called Janam Rashi. When Saturn, currently Saturn is also moving, the planets are moving all the time. When the transiting Saturn visits 12th sign from your moon, you start sub-phase called Sade Sati. Why is the term Sade Sati important? Saturn takes 2.5 years to cover one sign. As you know, every planet has a different speed when they rotate across the whole galaxy. So Saturn takes 2.5 years to complete that entire journey of the zodiac from Aries to Pisces. So 2.5 years 12th from moon, 2.5 years with moon and 2.5 years second from moon is 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 7.5 years. 7.5 Sade Sati. So it's nothing but transit of Saturn across your natal moon. Why is it important? Now Saturn, as I explained, brings grief. It brings pain. But it brings pain not because it likes to torture people, but because it's teaching you lessons. The pain is yours. He only wants you to learn because you don't want to learn and hence you have the pain. So it becomes painful for you if you're not learning what life is trying to teach you. So when you go through this particular pattern, which happens only twice or 3 times, you're living really long, then 3 times in your life. Okay. So what happens is then Saturn comes with its impact on your moon. The first thing it hits is your mental capacity. You will suddenly start feeling detached. you will suddenly start realizing that there are people around who are completely fake. So now who's trying to show you this picture? Who's revealing this truth? The impact of Saturn. Because he wants you to see that larger picture which you don't want to. While you're busy partying and you're busy looking at the smaller things, Saturn comes to say, you know, you're here, you have food, you have an intellect, you are intelligent, you have education, evolve.
It makes you uncomfortable in order to
You are
change.
uncomfortable. It's not making you uncomfortable. You are uncomfortable because no one wants to grow.
But it's going to force you to change.
It will.
Yeah.
Because it's going to come back to say, this is what you have done in your past lives and now you have come again. What are you doing about this time? Are you going to again waste this entire life and then come back? Or are you going to finally say, okay, I should change the following about me as a person?
So, I believe every time you go through a phase, and this is particularly for me, maybe for us as well, that when you go through something, there is always something to learn from it. And I think if you don't, it's going to come back to you and it's going to come in tenfolds till you don't actually learn. Is that also a part of Sade Sati?
It's a part of entire
Your
Navgraha working because everything is connected to your spiritual evolution. So similarly, when Saturn comes or when Sade Sati comes, you will meet your destiny, the destiny that you are not aware of. So sometimes it can be very happy because if you're fortunate, you're looking at your destiny. You're wanting what is written, but that's rare. If most of the time we don't want what we are heading towards, we want the opposite direction. And which is why the experience of Sade Sati becomes really difficult. Because life is pushing you in a certain direction, but you don't want to. So the best way to make your Sade Sati easier is surrender.